Hello, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Subscription Scale. I'm your host, Nick Frederick. With me today is Matt Poleski, who is the regional CFO at Gallagher and Company. Matt, welcome to the show.
Well, glad to be here.
Awesome to have you. Really appreciate it. Let's start at the beginning here, Matt. Tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of some of your background and how you came to be at Arthur Gallagher.
Well, I started my career off. I'm a bean counter by trade. I started at KPMG as an auditor, and I specialized in there with publicly traded software. Kind of familiar to most of your audience, the software subscription renewal model. Did that for a few years, the remnants of the .com model. So learned a lot there.
Okay.
Then in 2006, I entered a much more stable industry, which is the insurance brokerage industry. Now we're B2B connecting mostly middle market companies with insurance carriers. So we do a lot of D&O coverage, P&C, really any kind of insurance. We connect people as a middleman, but really been there watching the company grow. We've grown from 1.6 billion when I started in 2006 to now we're approaching 10 billion, and we're S&P 500. We're one of the primary sponsors of the Chicago Cubs, so grown tremendously, both organically and through M&A.
Wow, amazing. Well, talk us through a little bit of that growth. You guys, you said you're a middleman, so you're connecting kind of these end buyers of insurance with the carriers that ultimately provide the coverage. But how much of that growth has been due to organic, bringing on new clients versus potentially making acquisitions in the space?
Well, our business model is really half and half. So I don't know precisely, but we plan to actually grow because we're in a consolidating industry. We plan to grow half organically through M&A, or organically, and half through M&A. So watching it as we go, one of the key things that we've had to do is build out our platform so we can put everybody on the same accounting system, really leverage the systems. So establishing in the investments we made to get us on a common platform when COVID hit in 2020. So we went home, we didn't miss a beat, we went paperless. Was really, we didn't know it at the time, like what would happen when we didn't come into the office, but we found out we could really work virtually because of the investments we had made in technology. So when we are buying a company, we're looking here and we're saying, hey, how can we make 1 + 1 = 3? How do we find the things they're really good at, scale those things, create teams to support them, create career opportunities for that people, while taking out kind of the non-value back office costs, taking out things that maybe they don't have strengths in. So finding it's really, it's one of those putting the right people in the right seats in the bus. So it's like we find typically companies we have, it's the law of the few. They have a few really good people. And for those good people, it's really good because most of our leaders have come through M&A. I mean, some of them come organically through our intern program, but we're finding out, hey, how do we put people in the right roles? How do we scale them? And so it's really been a great experience for me.
Yeah. Roughly how many of these acquisitions have you guys done?
Well, I mean, if you follow the news, like we're doing, people tell me like they'll see Gallagher doing acquisitions a couple of months, right? I mean,
really?
It just keeps going. I do personally, I run the Northeast region, which is, it's not an insignificant piece of the business, but it is a tiny fraction of the whole business. I do probably 3 to 4 a year.
Yeah. Wow. Are there teams dedicated to just bringing and folding these acquisitions into the business?
Well, and that's our evolution. Now we do have a dedicated M&A integration team.
Okay.
Back when I started, we didn't, but we have teams that come in that specialize. And we have the work stream. So we'll have people dedicated to, I kind of run the accounting stream, and I'm the face person front kind of dealing with the client. There are teams that will shut down the bank accounts, switch the bank accounts over, go prepare them for the systems conversions from a finance perspective. But then we also have an HR work stream. We have an operations work stream. We have a sales work stream. So we have dedicated teams that kind of guide them through. And really, I mean, integration is typically, up to a 3-year process where the first year is really just getting you onto our systems. Year 2 is like, okay, I'm here. How do I really start to make 1 + 1 = 3 with the rest of the business? And by the time you get to year 3, you're pretty much fully integrated.
Yeah. What tends to be kind of the long pole in that tent? What do you find when you're bringing these acquisitions on board tends to be the most difficult or time consuming pieces?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we are a people business. So it's the relationship building and the buy-in, because sellers will sell for different reasons. Some of them are just looking to monetize their business and it's their retirement plan. Okay. Some are looking for our capabilities. So I think it's that relationship building of getting the understanding of, I think one of the biggest things is when we deal with like external consultants that help with M&A integration, well, they're very focused on getting the price right. And we're actually very focused on like, okay, we want a win-win price. So we're going to give you a fair price. We're not trying to be the best, like compared to private equity or something. We're not trying to compete on price. We're trying to compete on, this is the right home for you and your people. So as we bring them in, it's building that relationship, figuring out what they want, really learning the people. And that first year, we spend a lot of time on site, because if you have the relationships and you get the buy-in and you've aligned your purchase price, so we do typically an upfront and a back end purchase price, so we're aligning incentives. Once you get that alignment, there's always going to be some unknowns, but if you're doing it as a we together, you can kind of battle those things. Whereas if you're setting it up as a versus, we probably should walk away from the deal.
Yeah, well, I think because of that approach, which is great, by the way, because you've got all these VC companies who just want to cash out, write a check, send them off into the sunset. That means that if you're taking that hands-on people approach, each one's going to be different, at least in some ways, right? Some are going to need more hand-holding because, you're bringing really them into your family versus others where you're kind of helping them make an exit, right? So they kind of run the gamut, I would assume.
Yeah, and like you look at it, like some of them we buy and they have expertise in a particular niche, and they can be a hub for us, which we will build them around them, bolting things on to them and really having them be leaders with us. Other people are just looking to integrate in. So I think it does really depend, and each one of these is different. I think one of the best questions I get is like, okay, so tell me about an acquisition that's failed. And really, I've never taken an impairment. Like sometimes we had some testing when people leave, but we've made every single one of them work. And, so that in itself is fascinating, because you think like, okay, here's some big lessons learned for M&A where it didn't work. But we make them all work one way or another. Now, the best is when people perpetuate with us and they really become our stars, but some people aren't really interested. So it does run the gamut.
Yeah. What has been some of the more successful acquisitions for you? Like what did that end up looking like at the end of the day? You talk about bringing not only the assets of their business, but I think the people into your own organization who then flourish there. Is that the ultimate measure of success, or what is it? Yeah. What is it to you guys?
I think it is the people. When I look at some of the people I've worked with, like my M&A lead right now, he came on via acquisition in 2010. He's one of my best friends, and we can kind of like, when you have a good friend, because you can kind of give them a hard time, they give you a hard time, and you're in it together. So I think some of my best friends are actually former acquisition partners within the company, and that really is, and it's setting them up, because they're all in different roles. Like I'm thinking one who's head of M&A. I'm thinking another woman I just talked to earlier today who kind of runs our client service organization. Another one is the COO for the Americas. I mean, there's people from acquisitions that go into all sorts of things. They're leading niches. Like we have somebody leading a construction niche right now, came from acquisition. So really the HR component of it is, because you look at, we like 50%, we run very profitably, but half of our costs go to our people. So it's figuring out, well, how do I set my people up as an asset as opposed to an expense? So that way we can pay them a lot of money, but they're providing a return on capital, because it's like you got the right people in the right roles and you're creating those synergies. So I think it is really it's a talent strategy of getting people in the right thing and creating teams, because when you create those teams, you get 1 + 1 equaling 3. And then the great thing is, even the 1 + 1 = 3, you're getting, if you think about like the stock price is going up, those people can make more money, the company makes more money. When you line it up the right way, it's really good. Like I've been on the other side where it's not kind of lined up the right way, and then you're cutting, and cutting is not very fine. We like to be growing, and we do that by having expertise in certain niches, whether it's construction or D&O coverage or entertainment. We do have some highly successful niches and relationships that, really at the end of the day, it's a relationship and a people business.
Yeah. Do you find that some of these people, when they come on board, when they were running an independent business, and now you've kind of freed them up and taken away some of those commodity activities, right? Like HR and benefit, all of that other stuff, accounting that they, was kind of necessary to run their business, but wasn't really a differentiator for them. Do you find that now they can be kind of more free to go out and be a better salesperson or a better account manager and do the things that really do make the difference and bring in more revenue at the end of the day?
Yeah, and that's a transition for people, and it takes some coaching to get there. Because when you're buying an entrepreneur who's used to doing everything, sometimes it's a tough letting go. But I think the ones that buy in and embrace it and like, oh, this is great. I don't have to go through my monthly accounting close and figure out, like, I don't have to meet payroll. COVID was another great example. If you were bought by us before, you never had to worry about any of this small business getting loans. We were capitalized. We have investors. You don't have to, all you got to worry about is selling insurance. And to many people, that's a great benefit.
Right. Probably why they started that business in the first place, right? That was the thing they started wanting to do. They just had to do all of those other things. And now you kind of come in and take those things away and they can focus on that again.
Yes, but there is a change period there where it's like, okay, it's almost like, with your children, right? They go off to college, you have to be ready to let them go and let them, and then there's things that sometimes things go wrong that you had control of. And then you got to make sure that you're ready to let it go and realize, it may not be run the exact same way you run it, but it does work. And that's a transition process.
Yeah. You said you've had a very high success rate of bringing in new companies when you've acquired them, which means you probably have a good vetting process on the front end to identify when this is probably not going to work. What are some of those red flags that you guys look for and are like, this is probably not a good fit for us?
So we can look at the balance sheet pretty quickly. And so we know the great thing is it's a very small industry that we play in. So we kind of know from reputationally whether they have a good reputation or not. So we know that already just by knowing and if you have a good reputation, the good thing about insurance is it's going to renew every year. You're going to need your insurance policies every year. So for the most part, as long as we can look at the book and say like, okay, we understand what's there. We understand why your clients like you. We understand that they're willing to accept the name change from whoever you were before to being part of Gallagher. And usually they're more about the relationship than the name, and that relationship stays on. So I think one, it's like, okay, we got to make sure that we have a healthy balance sheet when we're buying it, because we do mostly our preferred method is an asset purchase as opposed to stock purchase. So we're buying the assets, then we just got to make sure that, hey, the records are clean enough that we know what we're buying. And then you got to look to say like, okay, does the comp structure fit with our model? Because it's like, look, if you're overpaying your people, then we got to adjust it to make sure the right time. And usually people are pretty happy to do that. Many of our people will hire a broker that kind of just think about when you're selling your house, you don't sell it yourself, you hire a real estate agent. Well, they will hire an agent that will kind of clean up and dress their house. So we kind of know, but a red flag would be like, look, when the structure goes, we've actually told some people, go back, get a broker, go clean your house, stage it correctly, and get it priced correctly. Because if they want to sell it themselves and they just have an unrealistic price expectation, it's not going to work. But many of our deals, because we do so many of them, we'll kind of tell people, don't go try to negotiate all this stuff, because some of our stuff is pretty cookie cutter, and we're not going, like, there's things that our board won't let us cave on. So once you realize that, hey, we're trying to set this up with an upfront price and a back end price, and really, it actually is better for us to pay you the full back end price, because that means it was successful. But we got to work together to achieve that. Getting that buy-in is probably the most, because somebody might intuitively think, oh, you don't want to pay me, you want to pay me less. That may be the mindset before we level set them. That really, no, we want to pay you the full thing, because that means it was successful.
We both won.
Don't pay you that back end, then I'm asked, why did I even do the deal? Because it's not, we want to pay full price because that means we're getting value.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned there about, an insurance business is by definition a recurring business, or in most cases, most policies are that type where you've got the consumer's going to auto renew it. We talk a lot on the show about subscription and recurring revenue being and engagement being the key to reducing churn, to getting people to renew and keep their subscription going. I think insurance is a fascinating product in the sense that people want it. Well, people need it. They know they need it. They're going to go out of their way to keep it. But the big but here is they hope they never have to use it. So it's like it kind of flips that concept a bit on its face. But how do you guys do that? How do you I mean, I'm sure your renewal rates are good, but how do you keep as many of those customers as you can and constantly remind them of the value they have in these policies?
Well, and I think part, if you ask my CEO, Pat Gallagher, he would say, like, look, one of the great things about this business is when there is a claim, when there is an incident, we help put people's lives back together, and we take pride in that. So I think when there is a time in need, we are there to advocate. Now, we are not the insurance company. We have relationships with the insurance companies, but to the extent you need an advocate, we're there to represent you and there to help you, and we're there in your time. Now, there is a lot of clients, depending on the client and nature. There's a lot of golfing that goes on with our producers, salespeople who go out and they have these relationships. But so a lot of this is, and really, like, we're a big company here. We do kind of like, so the other big companies would be like Aon and Marsh. However, we're more the middle market, and they're more of those big international companies. Now, there are some spaces where we compete, but we're generally competing against the people we're buying, which is your mom and pop insurance brokers that we're going up against. And so we really have much more capabilities than they do. And, there are obviously places where there's heavy bidding and price and all this other stuff. But for the most part, our customers are pretty happy with us and things do renew.
Yeah. What is the ratio roughly of the products that are renewable and continue to renew on versus like one-time or time-based policies?
It's really more based on which line you're in. So I think, like, on a macro basis, like, look, probably 70% of our stuff is like of that renewing nature. But then you look, like, we have the construction niche where these are construction projects. There are things that we do when companies go public. So there's events that trigger the insurance. So I think that's where we're trying to balance. Okay, here's 70% of our stuff is kind of going to renew no matter what. And then we try to balance the stuff that's sporadic, like the surety business, the builder's risk, these one-time events that they are recurring. They just don't recur at the same time every year. And certain years might have double the recurrence than others, depending on where they are in the business cycle. We try to balance that out. So when you look at our, in US, I think we're about 2.5 billion or whatever. The ups and the downs should offset each other so we can continuously grow the whole thing.
How much influence do you have to put on the gas and the brake across those different types of policies, or is it kind of market driven?
I think it's more market driven. We like where we can put, our lever is more like kind of on the expense side, right? So it's like, I think that's where our big lever is like we can kind of rein in the comp. A lot of our comp is variable because if we pay commissions. So if revenues are up, commissions go up. If revenues are down, commissions go down. So I think that's our lever really is more on the expense side than the revenue side. But that side, we've had pretty stubborn, we're publicly traded, so you can look at our documents. We had pretty steady revenue growth over really the 17 years I've been here.
Yeah. Well, what's next for the company? Is it continue this strategy of organic and inorganic growth? Is it, new markets, brand new products? What's next?
Well, I think, like, look, we want to keep growing. I'm not at the C-suite level, so it's not that I know exactly where the company's going, but I see us continuing to keep growing. There's more M&A. That my M&A pipeline is big, so we're going to keep looking at companies to acquire. And then I think where you have seen the evolution, when we first started this, so I've been in really this role since 2012. When we were integrating, we were more focused on getting them onto our systems and getting the synergies on the back office. I think now we're more focused on those front office synergies of, well, how do I create sales teams that have products that I can scale the product as opposed to just doing the back office synergies? Because that's really how you get the faster revenue growth, is by creating these teams that can really, that are really strong teams that are less dependent upon the individual, and it's more institutionalized for Gallagher.
Yeah. So I want to make sure I understand that correctly. So when you bring in an acquisition and you're enabling their sales team, is it because they've got a whole new suite of additional products that they can sell and new tools and ways to implement them even to their existing base of customers?
Yeah, well, they'll get existing our market capabilities, right? So they may not have had access to an international market before. Well, now you're going to have the worldwide access to be like, you might have previously said, I can't place this coverage.
Okay.
Not pretty much any coverage we can place. And you may not have, look, if your client is, let's say they have two offices, one in DC and one in San Francisco. Well, now we're in both. You might have been just in DC. Now you have a whole capability that's geographical in a different location. So your capabilities really do increase. And that's where we are saying, hey, don't go it alone. Let's take the team approach, because it's sometimes like everybody wants to be the hero, but the reality is when we give a little bit, it's less work and higher return.
Yeah. I'm curious, what are some of the newer, perhaps insurance products that you guys are bringing to market these days? I mean, I've talked to a couple pet health insurance companies, and it seems like that's a growing industry. Is there any new and innovative things out there that you guys are bringing to market?
I mean, there are some innovative things, and we are kind of dabbling in it. Like one of the things that we're dabbling in is intellectual property insurance.
Okay.
So it's like, look, for a startup company, you can get financing by having your intellectual property insured. So that's kind of a new niche product that we're doing that actually came via an acquisition we did last year. But I think for the most part, I mean, it's the tried and true insurance. And what's great about our industry is like, look, I started in 2006. This industry will probably live longer than me, right? Like you're always going to need your core P&C coverage, your core D&O, your core workers' comp. And it's like, look, what's also great about this is what we say is we follow the market, right? So it's like we're doing, let's say, a software company. If the software industry is growing, well, then insurance will grow. If that software industry is declining, well, then the insurance will decline. But then we kind of shift which industries we're covering based on the growth of, we just follow the general economy. So if the economy is growing, we want to be in the segments that are growing, because then we will get the growth by byproduct of that.
Okay. Well, speaking of the economy, given that some of the headwinds that we've been experiencing and the rapid inflation, what has that done? I mean, has the business kind of followed that as well, or what is the trend have you guys seen?
Well, for us, we've actually been outperforming. So,
really?
COVID was, you hate to say, a blessing in disguise for us, but it really was. Like when COVID hit, we didn't know what was going to happen, and we put in, like everybody else, we put the cost controls in place because we didn't know. And then we found out that our business actually grew during that time, because I think, one, because we had the capabilities that some of our competitors, nobody canceled their insurance, first of all. Second of all, we had more capabilities than some of our partner competitors that couldn't go virtual. The market hardened, so things went up. And then also because we were actually able to reduce a lot of our expenses, because then you can do things remotely. You don't have to travel as much.
Yep.
So some of our back office expenses actually went down. So you've seen Gallagher outperform. If you see anything from the stock, like we've outperformed since 2020. And the stock, we were excited the stock was at 100 in 2020, and now it's sitting at 215 only 3 years later. So it's over doubled in 3 years.
Yeah. You kind of said this earlier, but you attribute that to the technology foundations that had been laid up until that point that made going virtual a lot easier.
That we've made. I mean, really, it's a lot of scale the business, right? Because what we can do is we can bolt acquisitions on, take out the cost, add them in. So then you're getting economies of scale. So then the bigger we get, the more we just are the fixed cost reduces where the variable cost stays there, which is really, and that's why that's the great lever for us, because if sales do decrease, then our biggest expense is our commissions. Well, then those kind of self-cut.
Yeah, they kind of follow the top revenue line anyway, right?
Yeah, so it's a fantastic business model.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Matt, really enjoyed this, and I spent some years working for an insurance business, and so it's kind of fun for me a little bit to go back to kind of those days and thinking about it, because it is insurance is its own industry. It's got its own unique challenges and opportunities. But for anybody that was listening today, wants to learn more about Arthur Gallagher or has questions about for you perhaps about what we talked about, where are the best places for them to go?
Yeah, I mean, feel free to reach out to me. My email is Matt_Poleski@ajg.com. Happy to field anything if anybody wants to email me. Yeah, and the Gallagher, we're publicly traded, so we have an investors department. We have all those things. It's all readily available on our website.
Awesome. Well, Matt, really appreciate the time today and all of the insights that you shared. Again, thanks so much and best of luck.
All right. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.